Hello there, sword friends. This is going to be something of an odd video. I wasn't actually planning on making a video so soon about it because, frankly, I haven't had time to really process the information that I found, but there's some interesting tidbits, and I think there's probably some people interested in what to, well, basically the two things that I happen to have the dumb luck of having in my hand, and comparing and contrasting them. Now, the linky picture thingy probably already told you what I'm going to talk about, but in a nutshell, I have the good fortune of having one of these bad boys in hand. This is the Albion Alexandria. It was a recent secondhand purchase for me. I am overjoyed that I have it. It's a really, really cool sword. It's an Oakshot Type 18C. It's a pretty broad typology, it seems, but the point is that this is not a common shape that's representative. It's not something that's easy to find or buy in the mass production market. Albion is one of the few folks that was making one, and they make a pretty killer looking sword for $1,375. Now, Ronin Katana recently came out with this one. It's called the Two-Handed Medieval War Sword Euro Model 3.2 Limited Edition. It's $450, and it is supposed to be pretty similar to the Albion Alexandria. Well, at least it's a very obvious similar typology, which assumably is kind of modeled after something like this. This is, well, here you go. I think it's modeled after this sword. At least, you know, you can see the same writing here. I'm not sure exactly what that is. Naturally, I have not done enough research yet, but the main thing that I wanted to talk about is I have the good fortune. They are sitting yonder. I'm not good with cameras, but they're over this away. I have them both, and I took some quick measurements, and I thought I would share the result. Now, the quick and dirty explanation between the Albion Alexandria, which is this one that I'm moving the mouse over on the left, it's labeled Albion Alexandria, and this Ronin Katana medieval war sword, this is the Ronin Katana. I'll provide links in the description down below to these, the Weapon Dynamics computer links as well. The point I want to talk about is that the Albion version has a slightly shorter blade, slightly longer hilt, and it's heavier, actually. And this is the part that is actually really, really surprising. So before I did any measurements, they really look similar. The Ronin Katana has an obviously wider blade, and I will talk about some of the dimensions in just a moment. But the basic gist is the Albion feels lighter. It feels lighter as I swing it. It feels lighter as I move it around. It feels a little bit more controllable in the kind of thrust. But typically, like if a sword is really well balanced, it might stand up well. It might feel good in one position. But as soon as you start moving it around, that weight is really tough to hide. And I was kind of shocked to see that the Ronin Katana was lighter than the Albion by 6 ounces. So it's 3.4 ounces for the Ronin Katana, and it was 3 pounds 4 ounces for the Ronin Katana, and 3 pounds 10 ounces for the Albion Alexandria. Now, the other things that are interesting to note is that the center of gravity is much higher up for the Ronin Katana iteration. The point of balance on the Albion is about 3.5 inches up from the crossguard, and the Ronin Katana is 7.5 inches up from the crossguard, and that naturally is going to give it a lot more kind of imposing feel. Now, it's also interesting to note the blade node. From the theoretical value, both of these are kind of the outside of the of where I measured, and here they're on the inside. It's kind of an odd contrast. Anyway, you can see the tip rotational inertia. The higher number is supposed to represent something that feels more cumbersome in the hand. So this data is kind of validating the feeling I had in my hand, in that it felt a lot more, it felt heavier. Now, not in a bad way, though. Not necessarily in a good way either. It just had a lot more presence. It felt like a stouter, heavier blade. If I had my eyes closed, I would not be able to tell that these two swords I wouldn't have guessed they were at all the same sword. And if you look kind of over here in the corner, they do have marginal differences, but they look very, very similar. They have similar measurements, similar weights, but they are definitely, in the hand, they feel like very, very different weapons. Anyway, this is the general data. I'm going to leave the screen up while I talk through some of the differences that I noted in the blades themselves. So the first bit is there isn't necessarily like a fixed point to measure. So I measured at the crossguard as 1, spot to measure width and thickness, and the Albion is 3.2 or 3.02 inches wide at the crossguard, and the Ronin Katana is 3.2 inches, so it's about a quarter inch wider at the crossguard. Then I just basically picked an arbitrary point. I measured 26 inches up the blade, kind of starting 26 inches up from the base where I had measured previously, so up from the basically where the blade meets the crossguard. And actually, let me back up because I did not state the thickness at either of those locations. The Albion blade was 0.196 inches thick, so a little less than a quarter inch, and the Ronin Katana was almost right at a quarter inch at 0.23 inches thick. So the Ronin Katana has a thicker blade itself. And then again, 26 inches up from the crossguard, the Albion blade was 1.63 inches wide and 0.123 inches thick. The Ronin Katana was 1.68 inches wide and 1.67 inches thick. So again, wider and thicker pretty consistently all the way around, though they had very similar widths at the 26 inches up from the crossguard. So the shape-wise of the blade, they're very similar. And it's kind of striking how similar the blades, obviously they have some aesthetic differences. The Ronin Katana, if I pull these things up, the grips on the blade are marginally different. You see there is kind of a thick, I'm guessing cord wrap underneath a leather. The seam is somewhat pronounced, but it's not hard or tough to move around. The Albion, it's tough for me to even spot the seam. It's got a very even, kind of consistent looking cord wrap with several risers, and they just have different aesthetic pieces. The crossguard as well, the Ronin Katana has a thinner crossguard. The Albion's crossguard is a little bit more substantial. It's tough to see. They have very similar aesthetic shapes. Pommel on the Albion is larger. This one was fitted with a coin in either side. I can't imagine that added too much in terms of the weight. The Ronin does not. There's actually, some what appears to be like little markings inside the pommel. They're not. They're a little tough to make out. They may be manufacturing marks. The Ronin obviously also has this kind of writing bit in here, and I haven't really looked into what it is. Anyway, they are very similar looking swords in general appearance. They seem very, very similar, but they feel very different in the hand. I don't know if I want to say like very different. I'm kind of nitpicky here. The trick is, if I were to close my eyes, I would not guess that these looked as similar in terms of shape and all of that as they do. And I would certainly guess that the Albion feels kind of lighter in my hand, which was a really big surprise when I started measuring them. Now, I haven't cut with them yet. I haven't moved them around. In fairness, I got this recently, and this one showed up in the mail today. So I haven't really had time to examine them. I just thought I would share the measurements because I know some folks have been very interested, as this is not a common shape represented in the mass production market. It's tough to find something like this. And now that Ronin has one basically you can buy 3 of these things for the same price as one of these, or thereabouts. So the fact that it's as close it is, well, they're different, obviously, as I've just said, but the fact that you can buy something that is represented in this shape, and this also feels, it's stout. It's a big blade. You feel all 3 pounds 4 ounces of it, but it feels good. I don't feel disconnected from it. It does feel like it has a lot of presence, and it feels like it's going to be really fun to cut with. They're interesting blades, that's for sure. Definitely not like super maneuverable, lightweight or anything. Both of them feel very imposing. The Ronin more so. This one, the Ronin, gives me the sensation that it is going to feel pretty good in the cut. Whether or not it does that or not, I'm often wrong, so it's tough to say. The Albion is honestly a little surprising in terms of how it feels. When I got this in the mail, that was one thing that really surprised me. For such a big sword, I was very surprised at how kind of not clunky it feels. And neither of these feel clunky, but the Ronin certainly feels marginally clunkier than the Albion. The Albion was almost a shock to see how nimble a sword this size can be. This is a very substantial sword, and the fact that it moves and feels as comfortable as it does in hand, Me, you know, I'm not really a small guy, but I'm not that big either, and this feels just, I don't know, surprising to me at how comfortable it is to move around. Some other notable bits. I haven't used either of them significantly. I can't tell you how well they cut. I can't tell you how well they hold up. But they do have very similar points when I make them vibrate. You can see that the Ronin is quite a bit stiffer. That's also, if I were to hold one end and bend it, the Ronin feels stiffer if I try to bend it. Edgewise, they feel reasonably similar. I haven't cut with them, as I've stated. The other aesthetic difference, aside from the little markings on here, is Albion has a finish level quality that is different. The lines in general on the Albion are crisper and more consistent and straighter. There's less ripple in the surface of the steel of the blades on the Albion. The gap in the crossguard is cleaner on the Albion version than the Ronin, though I will have to give some props to Ronin. It's really easy to make these big, wide, honking gaps, and for a $450 sword, this is one of the kind of cleaner, kind of narrower gaps that I've seen on their pieces. So, tip of my hat to Ronin there. They did a pretty good job. This is better than I would expect at $450. There's some other differences. The pommel seems different. The Albion kind of wins the prize in terms of just how clean the lines are on it, the seams, how sharp basically just precision in terms of how well things seem to fit. The lines and how they flow. This like ridge on the crossguard here just moves a little bit on the Ronin, and the Albion seems a little more precise, straight, and consistent. But in terms of manufacturing, again, you can buy 3 of these for 1 of these. And I think I would rather have 3 of these. I mean, the Albion is nice and cool, but there isn't this demonstrable difference in quality that I've been able to see just yet. There are refinements, and if you are very particular about the quality control and just the little minute details, then the Albion, they're known for that. They're known for exceeding most people's expectations and the implementation and execution of those details. They're not perfect, but they do a pretty good job. The Ronin, this is quite a step up from what I've seen from their other lines. While I said it's heftier, this one does feel better in hand. This one still feels really good. So for what it's worth, I hope the Weapon Dynamics computer has helped. Again, I will throw some links in the description down below so you can compare and contrast them yourself. And if you have any questions, let me know. I will hopefully eventually do a review on both of these things. They're really, really cool, and maybe I can get some more comparison there when I have time to actually do some cutting and whatnot. But anyway, that's in the plan, just probably not very soon. So let me know if you have questions or if there's anything I can help you out with. As always, cheers and thanks for watching.